Hello, Facebook Live. I'm Carlos Silva of AJ Media alongside Nicholas Talbot, our sports editor at the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. We're here, like we mentioned right before, to talk a little bit about Texas Tech. They got a 56-10 victory over FCS Eastern Washington University. Nick, we'll get into a little bit of that, but just so you all know, as part of the Facebook Live, don't forget to look under it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let us know. We'll check it out on the laptop and be able to answer some questions, or if you just want a discussion point, feel free to do that as well. And of course, this is brought to you by University Medical Center. But first and foremost, I think the biggest thing from this, I know everyone's going to talk about the offense, 56 points, but 10 points given up by the defense, Nick. I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to look at that is, you say, 10 points, it's just an FCS team. That's not that big of a deal. But the quality of opponent that Eastern Washington was, I think that's what kind of makes it the big deal here. Because, I think they're kind of on par with the Iowa State, or they're on par with the Kansas, really, with what they've done in the past. They've knocked off FBS powers in the last 5 years. They beat Eastern Washington, Washington State last year, 45-42, a team coached by Mike Leach. So they knew how to face the air raid, and then they come in here and they only score 10 points. They averaged 401 yards passing last year, and today they get, I believe, 220 total, and that's just really impressive. And I think that really goes to speak to the volumes to see how far this defense has gone. Because if this was last year, I think, before the game, I was saying, well, both teams are probably going to put 400 yards passing.
Yep, absolutely. Well, not only that, but then it's probably a 62-60 game, something like that. But the most important thing, at least I'm taking away from it, the 10 points in terms of just what they did. They gave up all 10 points in the second quarter. Every other quarter in that game was a shutout. And not only that, but then that second half was a shutout. And more importantly, the thing that David Gibbs always talked about, and I spoke to Jordan Brooks about it after the game, they tackled. I mean, when you're in the open field against those type of athletes, as we mentioned, even though they lost 3 prolific receivers, some going to the NFL, that being Eastern Washington, they were still able to make plays. On the first play of the game, Deshaun Johnson goes, strips the ball, gets a turnover, huge change of momentum. Now, granted, they kind of sputtered a little bit early on, but then once they got the gears rolling, I think everything really kind of came to plan.
Yeah, and the offense kind of took it from there after the defense started creating some turnovers. I think, you see big turnovers there with the interceptions. Willie Sykes had a big interception return for a touchdown. It's nice to see the Texas Tech defense score. They get 3 turnovers total in this game. I believe two interceptions. Tony Jones on the other one?
Yes, Tony Jones.
And of course, the bobble/fumble that Deshaun Johnson forced.
Correct.
And then Douglas Coleman picked up. And that's really big. That's really what David Gibbs talked about since he's come here, is we have to create turnovers. Last year, we didn't see that at all. They were, I think, in the hundreds and turnover margin. And today, this was a great start to that. They forced turnovers. They got momentum back on their side. And that's really what happens when you win the turnover battle. I think that's something Kingsbury pointed out after this game, is that, they won this game. And if they can do this going forward, they'll be a pretty good football team.
So let's just kind of reset for those that are just kind of joining us. Of course, I'm Carlos Silva. This is Nicholas Talbot, sports editor with AJ Media. And, of course, the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. I'm with AJ Media as well. This is brought to you by University Medical Center. This is the Red Raiders post-game report. We're here just talking a little bit about the Red Raiders' 56-10 victory over Eastern Washington. We'll take your questions, answer anything you have in terms of what we saw from the game, what we heard from Cliff Kingsbury, Jordan Brooks, Derek Willies, Kiki Kuti, and several other people that we had available. I was also able to talk to the Eastern Washington head coach, Aaron Betts, and also spoke to Gage Gabrud, who we will talk about as well, a very prolific quarterback that was really kind of kept off kilter because of that defense. And let's get back to that defense just in terms of what they were able to do, just from a not necessarily a historical perspective, but when you look at the fact that they haven't given up this least amount of points up until, I believe it was Texas State, and I can't remember the stat. You would think I would because I wrote it. I believe it was about 2013, I believe is what it was.
It's been a long time, and I think one of the things that you really look at, okay, this team has not been able to stop their run. Here's Eastern Washington's stats for the day. They rushed the ball 36 times for 81 yards.
Yep.
Eastern Washington wasn't known for the running game, but teams that haven't been known for the running game, like Arizona State last year, ran all over Texas Tech and were able to exploit that. They aren't able to exploit that anymore because I think there's a lot better linebacking core. The defensive line did a lot better than I expected them to do. That's an area in the trenches is where I thought Texas Tech might really struggle, and they really kind of dominated the trenches today.
Yeah, Mike Thomas, Broderick Washington. You had Tony Jones, who was a rush end. I mean, he had a fantastic, I don't know if it'll be SportsCenter top 10, but I mean, he just put his paws up there, grabbed the ball out of nowhere, kind of, not necessarily J.J. Watt-like, but I mean, he made a play that you don't expect from a defensive lineman. Granted, he's more of a linebacker switch to it because of positional need. but I think just the fact that they're making plays, I think that's got to make David Gibbs smile a little bit, because that's something they've been lacking.
Yeah, they're sorely lacking. They haven't made. I mean, just watching this defense, you just for the last 2 years, you're like, geez, man, just make a play.
Yes.
Get the ball back for the offense, and I think that really helped the offense today because they were able to get the ball back, and then they were able to get back in some really good positions. And then you're able to get going on that.
Well, and then, of course, something that they weren't lacking in was offense. 56 points, of course, you have a little bit of a column on Nick Shimanek. I guess just kind of speak to what he was able to do, because I know we were talking about the fact that that young offensive line against a very veteran defensive line for Eastern Washington. We knew the ball was going to get out quick. It certainly did after they finally did get rolling.
The first 2 plays of this game, you were like, oh, my goodness, we're going to go 2-10 this season. Texas Tech is going to go 2-10. They had a 4th and 17, they had a 4th and 21, and there were 2 sacks for minus 19 yards. But in that time, Nick Shimanek was also 4 for 4 passing, and you saw him kind of build that confidence going forward. And then once the defense started, stopping them, and Texas Tech was able to make some plays, and then boom, on the big play, I think it was his 10th pass of the game. He was 9 for 9 for 61, only 61 yards.
Correct.
Dinking and dunking, and he said after the game, I was getting tired of doing checkdowns. I just wanted to let one rip.
Yeah.
And then he would let one rip 75 yards to Derek Wheelies that really set the tone for the rest of the game. It put them up 14-3. And then right after that, 2 passes later, when they get the ball back, 68 yards straight to Kiki Kuti.
Yep.
So that was really big. But then getting those big plays was really huge. And I think it really set momentum for Nick. He actually completed 23 of his first 24 passes and his first 14 passes overall, which completion-wise is just amazing.
Yep.
He was 1 pass away at that point when he was 23-24. The record for 25 passes is 24-25.
And, of course, we can blame Don Williams, who unfortunately is kind of writing a lot right now just because of that. There's just so much to write about from this game, but he was the one that kind of mentioned it, and then, of course, you can kind of say the
then he got like
sports writer jinx.
His next 3 passes were incomplete after that, but he did rebound and get his next 3 after that. And then even McLean Carter came in and was 3 for 3. So the Texas Tech offense did really well the game, especially in the passing game. You expect that from Texas Tech, but what really impressed me was just pure efficiency from this offense outside of those first 2 drives where they didn't get much going. Once they started to stretch the field, they were just very efficient today.
Absolutely. And like I said, this is Facebook Live. We're going to be here for maybe about let's say till about 10 o'clock. So if you have any questions or if you want to just post a comment, we'll kind of look at that and then kind of discuss it. I have some discussion points as well that we'll get to. We appreciate everyone that's kind of letting us know about the broadcast. We did turn up one of the gentlemen's mics, so we are reading, we are listening to you. Some guys that were turned up today, you got to talk about Desmond Nisby. We've been seeing the truck stick throughout at least the few practices, and then of course the few scrimmages that we've been able to see. He was able to do that today. 6 carries, 57 yards is not a lot, but when you look at the average by carry, 9.5. That's something that you would never think of with an offense that Texas Tech had, especially with the running game, and just the fact that they were able to do that. Just to go back to your point, I spoke to Derek Willies afterward. He said they were definitely looking in the backfield, so that allowed him to get a safety on flat-footed, as he mentioned to me. Got him flat-footed, was able to burn him for that 70-yard touchdown early on.
Yeah, and I was talking to Kiki after the game, too. And once Nisby broke a 20-yard run, and that opened up some lanes for the passing game, too. So I think that was one of the big ones. And then Justin Stockton, of course, got a 25-yard touchdown run. That really just kind of opened up the offense because, of course, when you run the ball, you can pass the ball better because you have to own the run. And once they started doing that, it was easy sailing for Texas Tech. I just love Nisby, though. I love the way he runs. I think I've talked several times about how much I love 3 yards in a cloud of dust, where this guy's doing 9 yards in a cloud of dust. If I was running my wishbone offense on NCAA 2000,
there you go.
When was the last time they actually made that game?
It's been a while, about 2013 maybe.
It breaks my heart.
The last time was Joey Harrington.
I would love to be running the wishbone with Desmond Nisby.
Well, speaking of Desmond Nisby, there were some other guys that were toting the ball as well. Justin Stockton had 8 carries, 51 yards, and then, of course, 2 touchdowns. One big one off the edge that really kind of started everything going. Then, of course, you got DeMarcus Felton, Mason Reed, who actually had a touchdown, but it was called back due to a holding penalty, unfortunately, because he took a big hit at the end of that one where he fell on his back. But 4 running backs that all have different characteristics. All of them complement each other very well, as Cliff Kingsbury said throughout the offseason. Desmond Nisby, that big, huge guy that can go between the tackles, hit the truck stick. Justin Stockton, as he showed, he can hit the edge. He's so quick. And DeMarcus Felton, a little bit of a mix of both, where he can also catch the ball out of the backfield if need be. And then Mason Reed, just kind of that kind of glue in terms of a guy that can kind of make those carries, get those carries. But I guess just overall, what did you see from the rushing game that you really liked?
Obviously, I think the rushing game, it just has multiple dimensions this year, and they're getting Justin Stockton in space. Last year, even if they got him in space, he didn't do a lot with it, but they didn't get him in space very often. He only had, I think, 154 yards rushing for the entire season.
Yep.
That wasn't going to get it done. The 2 previous years, he had over 350 yards rushing. They really got him in space today. That was able to get his 25-yard run. I really liked how they got him in space. They kind of mix and match the running backs for what they need. They got Nisby when they needed a big heavy hitter in there. I think he converted a really big 3rd down. So I just think it was a really good mix with these running backs, and that's something they didn't have last year. It just seemed like they were going to one guy, whether it was Ward or whether it was Felton or if it was Stockton at one time, and it really wasn't mixing and matching, and it really wasn't effective. They didn't even average 4 yards a carry last year overall. Today, of course, they run 40 times for 177 yards, and that's including the sacks. Those 2 sacks were minus 19 yards. So I think I wrote in one of my pieces where the running backs ran 32 times for 181 yards.
Yep.
So that's very good. That's almost 6 yards a carry. That's really what you want from a college offense.
And not only that, but then it gives, I know everyone talks about this, and it'll probably be a theme throughout this year, but it gives your defense some time to take a little bit of a rest, especially in this hot Lubbock heat. And I know Charles Brown kind of commented the Tech D looked ready to reclaim their pride. Certainly you have to think that when you only give up 10 points, and not only that, but all those 10 points were in the second quarter. So certainly a very, very good effort from the Tech defense where talking to Jordan Brooks, his quote was, "We wanted to show the fans and all the doubters of us that we are better, that we are the team that everyone expects us to be." And they certainly showed that today, more so because of the physicality they had and as we kind of mentioned at the start of this kind of Facebook Live, is the fact that they can tackle in open space. That was huge, especially with Tony Jones, Jashawn Johnson making that big turnover, as you mentioned earlier, and then Jordan Brooks, of course, and then even Rico Jeffers got in there, the freshman.
Yeah, and this team just couldn't tackle the last few years. It was just, that's why they couldn't stop the run. And the running backs would just plow right through them. They'd plow through the defensive line. They'd plow through the linebackers. This year, that's not gonna happen. Dakota Allen's gonna stop that. Jordan Brooks is gonna stop that. The secondary is gonna stop that. And it looks like the defensive line could actually stop that too, which is really what like I said, before coming in the game, the trenches were really my main concern. Protecting Nick Shimanek. They struggled on the first 2 possessions. And then after that, they were very solid. They opened up run lanes for the running game. And the defensive line, of course, did its work too. They only came up with 1 sack today, I believe, but
Tony Jones.
Yeah, Tony Jones. They got the production that you wanted to see. They got a push, which is what you want to see.
And not only that, but then when you kind of look at the tackles, just looking at the final stats right here, Jashawn Johnson had 7, Jordan Brooks had 7, Dakota Allen with 6, Braden String with 5. Those were the top guys, but when you look at 3 of those top guys, they're linebackers. So that shows that the defensive linemen are able to plug their holes and allow the linebackers to flow to those tackles. So certainly the defense was working today. Absolutely. I know everyone will talk about the FCS part of it. They are still a good offense. Say what you want, as you mentioned prior. They played very well against Washington State last year. They beat them. They played some other big-time teams in the NCAA Division I in terms of just keeping the game close. Oregon State, one that comes to mind as well. So certainly they were very, very good. But speaking of a guy that was good last year but kind of struggled a little bit, Gage Gabrud, the quarterback for Eastern Washington, 22 of 34, had 1 key interception, 207 yards, 1 touchdown. It didn't look like they got much going, only because Texas Tech was really slowing them down. That run attack just didn't punch them.
They didn't get a lot done, and he had the interception, and it seemed like they kind of they knocked him off his pace a little bit. It seemed like most of his throws were like behind the receiver, a couple in front of the receiver. He just didn't have a rhythm. The Texas Tech defense didn't let him get into a rhythm, which is exactly what Nick Shimanek was able to get into. He got into a rhythm. Gage Gabrud was not able to get into a rhythm today. He finished 22 of 34, which isn't terrible, but for only 207 yards, which for a guy who averaged 401 and passed for 5,000 yards and was the FCS Player of the Year, it's not really what I was expecting, and I have to credit the Texas Tech defense on doing that.
Not only that, but then we also knew he was a dual threat. He only had 5 rushes for 20 yards, so certainly a good thing there for Texas Tech just to slow him down. I know talking to Jordan Brooks and even Jashawn Johnson, I think, mentioned it too, was they had certain packages where they were kind of spying on him because they knew he was going to take off at some points. But when he did, they were able to get him within a yard or 2 after the line of scrimmage. So once again, holding those big plays to a minimum. They didn't really give up a big play to my knowledge. If anything, Texas Tech had more big plays throughout the game. Of course, Derek Willis, Kiki Kuti, we can kind of go through that. But Eastern Washington was unable to get a big play, unable to get that big play in terms of just momentum changer, because at least from my perspective, the biggest play was that 4th and 1. I want to say it was about the 25 of the Red Raiders. I apologize if I am missing that yard line, but when they stopped them there and then Texas Tech went and scored, then they were able to get that last score at the end of the second quarter to, I believe, to make it 35 to, I want to say 35 to 10 at that point at halftime. I think that was the key there, because you kind of make that scoring divide that much bigger, and then there's that much more pressure on the offense going into it.
Absolutely. Like you're saying, the big plays. The longest pass for them was 28 yards. The longest run was 23 yards.
Yep.
And the Red Raiders had a 75 and a 68. So I think that that says it's shown. And always they outrushed them 177 to 81. And
Yeah.
if you outrush someone, you're gonna win the game.
And then, of course, when you get the ball passed, I mean, we have a few highlights that we can show in terms of some of these players. Kiki Kuti being one of them, Derek Willis being another one. Of course, you got everyone kind of running the ball as well. Justin Stockton, Trey King had a touchdown as well. He had a very efficient day. I think it was 1 carry, 1 yard, 1 touchdown. That's pretty darn good if you're a running back at that point. But then, of course, when you kind of look at some other things here, Texas Tech with 32 first downs compared to 19 for Eastern Washington. So there was a lot more, I guess, drive. I can't think of the term, but I'm guessing drive efficiency. You were basically able to keep time of possession in your favor, even though it's only 32 minutes, 39 seconds compared to 27 minutes and 21 seconds. Texas Tech was able to keep its defense fresh. They were able to get first downs, maybe slow down the Eastern Washington defense, which maybe wasn't used to the Lubbock heat, because you're coming over there from Washington. You're not used to the heat, so maybe that affected them a little bit at some point, because maybe that's why both teams started slow. A little bit of nerves, maybe a little tight, you don't know. But either way, Texas Tech got into a huge rhythm, and I think that was the biggest thing. But then just to kind of wrap things up, because I know it's about 10 o'clock, we're trying to get, like I said, just get some people kind of talking a little bit about Texas Tech after the game. Just your final thoughts from this in terms of Texas Tech getting the victory. We knew this should have happened, but at least from my perspective, they got the win that they should have gotten, which was 46.
Yeah, like I said before the game, I picked it 45 to 34, or even closer. I think in our live video I picked it closer, and then in the paper I picked a little wider margin after looking at a couple things. But I'd never thought 46 points. That's the biggest thing to me. You look at the two things that you need to do. You need to establish the trenches. Done. You need to show that Nick Shimonek's the guy. Done. You need to show that you're not going to be run over on defense like you've been in the past.
Check mark.
Done. They did all three things they needed to do. They win 56 to 10. That's all. I mean, sometimes you want to go through and you say, well, we did 2 out of 3. It's pretty good. It's our first, first game of the year. Texas Tech accomplished all three things I think it wanted to do today.
Not only that, but then they get a bye week this week before they host Arizona State in a couple of weeks. And, of course, we'll have more information on that in terms of a Red Raiders podcast on SoundCloud.com and, of course, iTunes. Look up Lub Hub on that, which is also brought to you by University Medical Center along with the Red Raiders postgame show. In terms of my final thoughts, kind of the same thing as you. And I think a couple of other people mentioned this as well. Defense looked great. Offense always looks great. Nice wins. And I think that's the important thing. You know the offense will be there. It just takes a while. The fact that the defense was able to really kind of pick you up in a way, or at least pick Texas Tech up today, I think that was the important thing. And I think if they're able to kind of keep that going, they're going to be in a lot of games, especially if the turnover battle's in their favor.
I completely agree. It was just a well-rounded game from Texas Tech, which is exactly what we wanted, Carlos.
Well, once again, we appreciate you all watching. This has been another edition of the Red Raiders Facebook Live edition for the post-game show. Texas Tech, of course, defeating Eastern Washington 56 to 10. I'm Carlos Silva of AJ Media. This is Nick Talbot, the sports editor here at the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. We'll do this again after another Texas Tech Texas Tech game. There you go. I'm trying to think ahead. Yes, I am.
The Texas Tech fans are getting really happy about right now.
Yes, they are. But once again, we'll do this after every Texas Tech football game in terms of either away or here at home, and we'll answer your questions or any comments that you have. As always, brought to you by University Medical Center. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.